Hello, my name is Fiona Imbali from ACTS, and today I am privileged to have Dr. Robert Ochieng, who is a consultant on forestry, climate change and energy. Welcome, Dr. Could you briefly describe to us the energy sector landscape in Kenya and perhaps East Africa?
Thank you very much. I think our energy sector is one of the drivers of the economy, if you can consider it that. But most importantly, here in Kenya, most of our energy, at least at the household level, come from renewable energy, basically biomass. That basically means firewood and charcoal, which supplies a good percentage. But we also need to know that some of our energy is also supplied by petroleum, I think at around 22% or something like that. And also we have a lot of our supply coming from geothermal. So broadly looking at it, most of the energy resources in Kenya that are coming up also includes wind power, that's gaining popularity, but also solar. So we have a lot of solar home systems going on, solar water heaters that are being invested in by both by government but also by private agencies.
Thank you very much. We've had the privilege of having you to speak to us about the RED Plus projects in the East African countries and how the various policymakers are looking at tapping into the GCF fund. What is your view on some of the key areas that policymakers are currently engaged on, and what could they do differently with regards to the energy sector and especially the RED Plus projects?
So the RED process in Kenya, there is the one that is spearheaded by the government of Kenya. This is basically implemented by the Kenya Forest Service and the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources. These are some challenges, but I think there is some process ongoing with funding to facilitate RED processes in Kenya. Besides that, we have also what you can call private sector or NGO implementation of these RED projects. One of them is, for instance, what the Wildlife Works is doing in Kasigao, and they have been able to trade on carbon credits that they have generated from that project. So many stakeholders are promoting some kind of RED projects within their small localities, for instance in forest conservation, in afforestation and reforestation, but also in trying to reduce usage of firewood and charcoal, basically through improved technologies. This is happening not only in Kenya but also here in the region, and it's already having impacts. Now, in terms of strategies, most of our policymakers, for us here in Africa, the major concern is adaptation. But we've also pledged in our INDCs, that is our intended nationally determined contributions, to also participate in mitigation. And the mitigation potential that many of our countries have identified is usually in the renewable energy sector. So we think of trying to reduce our consumption of fossil fuels by increasing our sources from renewables. And one of the renewables, or some of them, include, as I've mentioned, geothermal. Particularly here in Kenya, we are really increasing our geothermal potential, but also we are also expanding into wind big time. I think you know about the Turkana wind project. These are coming up, and one is also proposed for Isiolo and several other ones. The other one is about solar. I mentioned that we have a lot of solar home systems going on, but also the government is trying to also do some solar projects from what we could call mini grids from solar energy projects. So I think those are the critical areas that the government is thinking. But also at household level, where we consume a lot of biomass, there is some tendency or propositions to diversify and use better technologies so that we reduce the consumption of firewood at the household level. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Well, before the GCF fund came into play, we had the clean development mechanism, which a lot of stakeholders, especially in Africa, said that it did not work well for them because Africa only got 2%, while countries like China actually got 50% of the funds. What are some of the challenges? Of course, as a widely known consultant in the forestry and of course in the climate change sphere, what are some of the challenges that stakeholders, the policymakers and the governments are facing with regards to ensuring that their proposals are definitely up to standard for funding at the GCF, and what would you perhaps advise that they do differently this time round to ensure that they tap into this fund?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges we face is basically the technical capacity to do proposals that can compete with other countries. And that is an area that needs improvement. I know there are many people in government with very good writing skills and can put in place competitive proposals. The challenge is that they hardly have time to write because their desks are always full. But we also have organizations that are trying to build capacities of government in doing like what you have just done here today, that is trying to bring up the skills of our researchers, but also our technical staff in the ministries, departments and agencies, and this could actually improve our competitiveness. The other thing that is a challenge is because most of us in the region here, the major emitting sectors is mostly about renewable energy sector. So we don't have fossil fuel except the recent discovery of oil in Kenya that is probably at coal that would now increase our emissions. But going forward, most of our emissions are usually very low. So the little that we can do is usually in improving energy efficiency in our industrial processes, in the cement manufacture. But some of these are very technical processes where many of our people don't have skills, and we would need a little more skill building in these kind of areas to improve our capacity.
You call yourself a forester. Could you tell us a bit more about the forestry, more about the forests in Kenya? Do we have a lot of proposals on Red Plus? And what are some of the challenges that foresters are facing in terms of also getting their projects funded at the GCF?
I think it's the fluidity, or let's say the dynamics in the policy. So you might think of doing something and all of a sudden the government comes with certain bans on, let's say, there is not going to be doing this and there's not going to do that. So this is not very predictable for people who want to engage in serious conservation and protection of the forest. But that said, I think forestry presents a very lucrative or maybe an opportunity to build up projects around. Both in conservation of national government forests, the state-owned forests, but also particularly for the county governments that are just setting up their forest management plans, trying to build capacity, recruit staff to manage their forests. I think this is an area that could be explored for projects like Red Plus and generally other GCF funding windows.
Thank you very much. You've had the privilege of sitting in some of the sessions with the policymakers as they have undergone training processes on the climate relevant innovation system builders cribs. What do you have to say about the processes? Are they important? Have they been effective? What do you have to say about them?
The processes are really working in terms of improving just general exposure, learning what are the procedures, what is required if you are to do a fund for GCS, Global Green Climate Funds. So I would say these processes are quite enlightening for the policymakers, and some of them that I know are taking initiatives, particularly within NEMA and other government agencies, to put up in proposals to build capacity of us to develop. And I think we also have the adaptation fund now housed here with some good money. So that means that though we have challenges, but we're also making some progress.
Thank you very much. Definitely insightful discussions here with Dr. Robert Ochieng. Thank you very much for having time to speak to me. Thank you very much.